Good morning, dear children. Hope you all are fine. We are continuing the chapter Print Culture and the Modern World. In the last session, we have discussed about the evolution of printing and how it reaches to the illiterate peoples. Here we can continue it. Booksellers printed in expensive books, ballads, folk tales, and other entertaining material which was sold for them by peddlers. In England, travelling peddlers known as chapmen sold pocket-sized books or chap books for a penny. The books were commonly called penny chapbooks. In France, inexpensive books called bibliothèques were sold to the poor. Periodicals, newspapers, and journals were also being published. At the same time, scientists like Sir Isaac Newton and philosophers like Thomas Paine and Voltaire started publishing discoveries and ideas. By the 18th century, people believed that books had the power to liberate society from despotism or absolute power. This belief made French novelist Louis Sébastien Mercier declared his famous quote tremble before the virtual writer. For these reasons, many historians believe there could have been possible connection between the print revolution and the French Revolution. They pointed out that the writings of philosophers like Voltaire and Rousseau were very popular and it encouraged people to think radically. These writers wanted people to consider things, logic and of despotism, church and state. All these ideas from print paved the ways for debate and discussions and made people question about the ideas and beliefs. Several cartoons and caricatures were printed which shows the French monarchy enjoying only pleasures but the common man suffered. This created protest against monarchy. However, the French people also exposed print propaganda from the church and the monarchy. Print had its impact. It did not influence directly but inspired differently. The print culture shows several changes in the 19th century. Now that you had the high literacy rate, a large number of children, women, and workers became a part of reading culture. During this period, primary education was made mandatory for the children. School texts, books and reading materials like folk and fairy tales for children formed major parts of the publishing industry. Grimm's fairy tale, a popular collection of German folk tales, was published during this period. Interestingly, in 1857, a press was set up in France that printed books only for children. Women also showed a huge interest in literature. Any magazines meant for the working class became especially popular among women. Several other manuals on education and housekeeping were also popular at that time. Apart from that, reading women also took up writing. Jane Austen, Bronte sisters, and Mary Ann Evans, known by her pen name George Eliot, were some of these best-known female novelists of their time. Their writings defined the new woman as a person with strength, personality, intelligence, and determination. Lending libraries also became a means of educating people of the low middle class people of England began educating themselves. Some of them even took up writing with helping of these libraries. In the mid-19th century, the number of working hours decreased. This gave working people an opportunity to read and write in their leisure hours. Meanwhile, printers and publishers also came up with a new strategy to sell their products. They now started publishing serialized novels. The Selling series was one such popular series so much in England. Advertisements, notices were printed and pasted on walls of streets, buildings, and common places to attract buyers. Even during the Great Depression in 1930s, they used a smart strategy of printing cheap books, black edition, to maintain sales during this period. Apart from that, these strategies that changed the face of reading and print culture, there was also a series of innovations in printing technology. By the mid-19th century, Richard M. Howe of New York developed a cylindrical press that operated on electricity. It could print 8,000 sheets per hour. This press was useful for printing newspapers. In the 19th century, the offset press was developed, which could print 6 colors at a time. This was followed by other developments in printing technology. These innovations and strategies in the 19th century transformed print and the reading culture to a great extent. Prior to the advent of print in India, people read manuscripts on palm leaves and handmade papers. In the mid-16th century, the printing press was introduced to India by the Portuguese missionaries. Several books were printed by villagers, priests, and missionaries in South Indian languages. Though England presses were imported to India from the late 17th century, printing developed later in India. Towards the end of 18th century, a number of newspapers and journals have been printed. Gangadhar Bhattacharya, introduced in Bengal, was the first newspaper is started by an Indian. Several villages began to take place in society around the early 19th century. Consequently, printing and newspapers became an useful medium to convey the views of both social and reformers as well as orthodox villagers to the people. The argument which is practices grew intense between reformers and Hindu orthodoxy. To reach the wider audience, Rajaram Mohan Roy, a social reformer, published the Sampath Kaumudi and processed view to the Hindu orthodoxy published the Samachar Chandrika. Later, two Persian newspapers, Jami-i-Jahan Nama and Shamsul Akbar, a Gujarati newspaper, the Bombay Samachar, started publication at the same time. The ulama colleges of Islam were forced to change by the collection or by the colloquial rule, automatically leading to the extension of community. Therefore, they began newspapers containing teachers. The Deoband Seminary was started and the Hindus were started. Several books in India were published by different Indian languages. Ramcharan Manas was written by Tulsidas in 16th century. Text published later. Several villages' texts were published in portable form, which increased relationship or readership of this textbook. As the reading culture grew in India, people wanted to read novels, stories, and poems, as well as social and political issues. Later, visuals also became a part of print culture. Several painters like Raja Ravi Verma provided their artwork for circulation. Caricatures to the cartoon were also published, which depicted the social and political issues of society. Women became an important part of print culture too. During this time, several women began to write about women's life. These included Kailash Bhashini Devi, Tarabai Shinde, Pandita Ramabai were the few, while some women of other conservative family were settled women away from learning. However, there were many women like Rashundari Devi who were married to an orthodox family and learned to read. She wrote her autobiography Amar Jiban in Bengali. Similarly, there were many other publications pushed upon women education. Widowhood, widow remarriage leads to the national movements in India. Children, here we are winding up this session. It will be continued in next section. Thank you.